So again, good evening. Thank you, everyone, for attending. For those attending in person or in Zoom, in need of an interpreter who speaks Spanish, in Español, um, live translation services are available. If you are here in person, please go to the registration desk to ask for a headset. If you're tuning in through Zoom, please select the appropriate language channel. And now I'd like to call our interpreter to make an announcement. El intérprete.
Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos. Si alguien necesita de interpretación en español, hay aparatos disponibles y nos lo piden, por favor, en la mesa. Gracias.
All right. So good evening again, everyone. And thank you for being here. My name is Henry Garrido. I am the Executive Director of District Council 37 and here at the commission, along with Arbor Rice, who is unable to join us today. I want to thank Co-Director Shirley Solomon, Associate Director Mars Scott of the Museum of Arts, the Bronx Museum of Arts, and their staff for hosting us this evening. Tonight, we will continue our second round of public hearings taking place in all 5 boroughs. These hearings continue our effort to solicit proposal from policy experts and the public on substantial effective amendments to the city charter. The charter is our city's foundational document because the charter plays a vital role in establishing the structure and procedures of city government. It shapes how decisions are made on a wide range of issues affecting everyday New Yorkers. The commission has been empaneled to conduct a thorough review of the charter and craft proposals to be put before the voters. This is our chance to create a better functioning city, one that is more transparent in its activity and more accountable to the people. It is an opportunity to make changes to ensure our city is less vulnerable to manipulation, corruption, or fraud. I know that all of my colleagues take responsibility very seriously. While this commission was convened via local law passed by the city council, we are an independent body. Regardless of the merits, any proposal that can be achieved by local law will likely not be up for our consideration. The commission will not consider any proposals that weaken local democracy of New Yorkers' rights. At our first round of the 5 borough hearings and through meetings with community partners and organizations, we received many suggestions on what to change in the charter. Following the process, the commission staff produced a preliminary report outlining several focus areas for our consideration, including government accountability, budget transparency, and land use. Our second round of hearings is concentrating on these topics, with each hearing convening one topic. Our past 2 hearings have been focused on budget transparency and government accountability. Tonight, we will hear testimony on land use. A final note on the process, we're not the only commission reviewing the charter. This commission is distinct from the Charter Revision Commission convened by the mayor. Both commissions are working simultaneously but separate. And I want to start by introductions. Harry Isaac Black is joining us today as Council. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome, Harry. And I'd like to ask members of the commission to briefly introduce themselves, starting to my right, my far right. One thing about the microphone, some are wired, some are wireless. If it is a wired microphone, you need to either pull it off or put it close to you so people can hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
Good evening, everyone. Matt Gawald, appointment from the Manhattan Borough President.
Good evening, everyone. Navardo Lopez, appointed by Speaker Adrian Adams.
Good evening, I'm Manny Pastreich, and I have the honor of being appointed by Speaker Adams.
Good evening, Mark Winston Griffith, appointed by Public Advocate Jemani Williams.
Good evening, I'm Alan Swisher, the appointee of Queensborough President Donovan Richards.
Good evening, Rod Jones, appointed by City Council Chair Adrian Adams.
And then we have commissioners who are signing on Zoom, online. Why don't we start with Dr. Raju? Commissioner Raju, would you introduce?
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Raju, appointed by Staten Island Borough President.
Okay. Joanne, sorry.
Good evening, everybody. Joanne Yu, appointed by Speaker Adams.
All right, let's keep going. I see some.
I guess I could go. Mike Resiopo, appointed by Borough President, Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso.
And good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you. This is Robert Maraglia, proudly appointed by Bronx Borough President Vanessa L. Gibson. Welcome to the Bronx and hello from the UK.
Good evening, Chair. Rahul Agarwal, appointed by the Mayor.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. You know, we want to turn out now to the testimony portion of tonight's agenda that will focus on land use. One of the most urgent challenges facing New York City is a housing crisis. To address this crisis, our commission is considering proposals that would approach land use and planning equitable and holistically without weakening the voices of the city's many diverse community. It is in its preliminary report, the commission staff made several recommendations on how to improve transparency and accountability in the city's land use and planning processes. This includes strengthening the Fair Housing Framework law by holding agencies accountable to ensure the city is taking an equitable approach to neighborhood planning, providing more opportunities for city agencies to support communities planning for their own housing growth, improving the ULURP pre-certification process to improve transparency and accountability and efficiency, and revising the way the city evaluates its own acquisition of office space in private buildings. The commission is grateful to the community members, affordable housing developers, housing advocates, and elected officials who have joined us today to reflect on these ideas and share others that they might have themselves. If you intend to testify today, we have not yet, and you have not registered to do so, we will accept registration up to the first 30 minutes of tonight's hearings. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. Video recording or photography is not allowed from the witness table. At tonight's hearing, we'll ask folks to limit their testimony to 3 minutes, and I'm going to be very strict on this because we have a hard stop at 7. And I will let you know when your time is up. No buzzer, Manny. No. Tonight's hearing focuses on land use. We welcome any testimony on the proposed revision to the charter. So I'm going to call witnesses up in panels. Commissioners are encouraged to ask questions based on testimony given, but I ask that you hold your questions until each member of the panel has testified. And finally, I ask our witnesses and commissioners to speak directly into the mics so that our Zoom attendees can clearly hear you. I'd like to invite the first panel, starting with our borough president, Vanessa Gibson. If you can come to testify. Is she here? We should, Vanessa. I think Councilwoman Narcisse, are you on Zoom as well?
Yes,
will-
I am here.
You will-
Thank you.
Will be the second to testify. And then Councilwoman Stevens, you are also will be following Councilwoman Assis. So welcome all. Thank you for being here. Let me start with you, Borough President.
It's okay. I used to be a council member.
Far from
Thank
it.
you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and official bienvenidos. Welcome to the Bronx. Welcome to the Bronx Museum of the Arts. So grateful to be with our distinguished commissioners of the New York City Commission to strengthen local democracy. Thank you, Co-Chair Henry Garrido. I also want to recognize Co-Chair Alva Rice and all of the commissioners. Thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for coming to our borough. Really important conversations that we're having, and I'm going to provide my limited testimony for all of you and hoping that we will continue to work together as we proudly serve our borough here at Borough Hall. I'm urging the commission to consider restoring and strengthening New York City's fair share principles so that no single community board bears an outsized burden of shelters and migrant facilities. Our city must do a better job of upholding its own fair share principles. While these policies were created to equitably distribute facilities and other programs like shelters at migrant locations, in practice, it is the low-income, working-class communities of color that continue to carry a disproportionate burden. Further, these same communities are not afforded any additional city support to help with the impact of the high-need temporary housing that they are unfairly given. For example, our 59 community districts across 5 boroughs, 9 currently have 0 shelters at all. Meanwhile, Bronx community boards 5 and 6 have more than 20 each, despite already facing high levels of poverty rates. Bronx Community Board 6, for instance, is 91% African-American and Latino and has a poverty rate of 39%. Compare that to the citywide poverty rate of 17%. This is a clear violation of the fair share intent and places an unjust burden on many of these communities. This issue has only been worsened by the administration's handling of our migrant crisis. And we understand it was a migrant crisis that none of us knew would happen. But we recently opened a 2,200-bed single men's migrant facility at 322 Bruckner Boulevard in the South Bronx community. We got very little notification, no advancement, no community engagement at all, nor was our fair share analysis even considered when this site was cited. But rather it was simply done by Mayor Eric Adams and the administration. This shelter was a vacant warehouse building that's located in a heavy industrial zone and is not fit to house anyone, let alone a high needs population like single adult men that truly need help and sustainable programs. The ability for the administration to continue to renew an emergency executive order in perpetuity should not be legal. It gives our city too much flexibility to place migrants and other populations in unsafe, substandard living conditions, and these decisions are circumventing our due process, and it's putting many residents' lives in danger. Changes need to be made to any laws that house people to ensure that any site is legally habitable, even if those people or those residents are not residents of our city, with no exceptions, as it really is a human rights issue. This does not seem like a high bar, high standard, even under the most difficult of circumstances. The decision for where migrant housing and other transitional housing and supportive housing are being located are made because it is often inexpensive to do so in places like the Bronx than anywhere else. but cost alone should not justify furthering inequality. To ensure equity going forward, we recommend every community board adopt an initial 197A plan within the next 5 years and updating it every 5 years as part of their own CDN. That's the Community District Needs Assessment, CDNA. These plans would define local growth areas, population shifts, and fair share responsibilities and guide many of our city agencies today, like the Department of City Planning, HPD, and DHS in siting facilities. Projects that align with these plans could bypass city council and receive CPC approval directly, avoiding political vetoes and enforcing shared responsibility. Communities that do not meet fair share benchmarks should see capital resources redirected as well. For projects that are entering a public review, the pre-certification process is a major bottleneck for many reasons, but one often under-discussed problem is the quality of private applications significantly impacts internal reviews at several agencies. Sometimes they're rushed, incomplete proposals that consume a lot of time and stall the progress, but are often required as part of the overall review process that the city must undertake. And we understand that. Streamlining reviews, especially CEQR, where duplicative could ease this burden. So I know I'm close to my 3 minutes, so let me also just say very quickly that when it comes to historic districts, we appreciate and value character of our neighborhoods, but we believe that we also need to look at this system with needed reforms. Some of our landmarking neighborhoods does limit growth in many of our more affluent areas where the majority of these historic districts are located, and it pushes the development into other communities and neighborhoods across our city. We know that we are living in an affordability crisis and a homelessness crisis. And when we say that it is a shared responsibility, we need to mean that with actions. All 59 community boards must do their fair share. And it's really unfair that the same majority of community boards have really shouldered the burden of development of affordable housing. And we believe that that should be changed. Historic district
Madam
preservation
Borough
rules.
President, if
Thank
could
you.
kindly-
Thank you so much. I look forward to your conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we're gonna hear from Councilwoman Narcisse. If you could,
Hi, thank you, Chair, and all the panels. Thank you for having this hearing. My name is Mercedes Narcisse. I represent the 46th District. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to address the growing concern in our city, one that directly impacts our democracy in my district. The need for greater transparency, and we have to hold people accountable. Land use and rezoning processes. While this hearing focuses on broader issues related to land use, I want to bring to your attention a pressing example in my community that underscore the importance of changes we are discussing today. The situation surrounding 2134 Cole Street. Originally, the site was approved by Community Board 15 and City Council for development of affordable housing to address the growing needs of local families. However, without proper notification or community input, the land was sold and development plans were suddenly changed. The site was repurposed for a homeless shelter instead, leaving residents who were promised affordable housing feeling blindsided and unheard. This drastic shift in project scope with no community consultation is a classic case of bait and switch. Tactics that undermine the integrity of the zoning process and erode trust in our local government. I stood in front of Community Board 15 to ask everyone that we have to do our fair share. It jeopardizes the stability of neighborhoods that are already struggling with development and sufficient infrastructure and a lack of essential services. This is not just an isolated issue. It is a symptom of a broken system. Now, my office is scrambling to right this wrong and restore the original vision for the site. which was to address the needs of local families through affordable housing. This is why we must be vigilant and take action to prevent similar situations from occurring in other neighborhoods. To avoid future bait and switch, I propose that when the intended use of rezoning property changes, it must be brought back to the community board, the board president's office, the city planning commission, and the city council. In other words, the same points of approval that granted the original zoning change should be involved again when the use of the scope of the project shifts. This is fundamental part of preserving local democracy and ensuring that decisions made in the past are not disregarded without consent of those who will live with the consequences. Transparency in this decision is vital to building trust with our residents. They must know that their voices are heard and that their community is not subject to decision made behind closed doors. I urge my colleagues and you, your panels here, everyone here, to support measures that bring folks to be accountable to this process and prevent the displacement of local priorities by backroom deals. So I want to thank you, and I'm going to continue working very hard to make sure the community voice are being heard. So I thank you for your time all, and the commissioners, thank you so much. Henry Corrido.
Councilmember Ryan.
I thought I was next.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were off screen.
No, I'm here.
All right. Councilwoman Stevens, please. Sorry, I couldn't see you. Please start.
Good evening and welcome to District 16. I'm so happy that you guys chose this place to have our meetings this evening. I'm Councilmember Althea Stevens, and I proudly serve as the New York City Council member for District 16 in the West Bronx.
Woman, could you give us one moment? We're having a little bit of an issue.
Okay.
All right. Ready? All right, you can start now.
Good evening, and my name is Councilmember Althea Stevens of District 16. I am a Bronx resident, and have seen firsthand how our city land use planning system has long failed to center equity and community voices, especially in District 16. I'm here today to speak in strong support of a commission staff recommendations to create more just and accountable land use system for New Yorkers. First, I support the recommendations for the fair housing planning to fully integrate into the city charter. Housing equity cannot be an afterthought. It must be built into the foundation of how the plan and grows our city. I also support strengthening our fair housing framework to require Department of City Planning to conduct neighborhood planning studies in areas that are not meeting their housing production targets. We need a fair share approach. Every community should contribute. No neighborhood should carry a disproportionate burden like mine has currently. Equity, equally important, is to ensure that the city charter includes a clear, accessible process for community planning. Communities should not be disregarded by red tape. We need a process that people can use, not just one that exists in theory. The Department of Planning must also take community input serious. This includes providing technical assistance to support grassroots efforts and empowering community boards to plan for their own growth with meaningful support with DCP. And it should also be easier for community-based plans to go through the EULA process, even when DCP doesn't fully back them. Local voices deserve a pathway forward, not a dead end. Let's be clear, the pre-certification phase is where many projects stall. It is opaque, slow, and inefficient. I strongly support reform to make sure that this stage is more transparent, responsive, and reduce unnecessary project failure. Finally, I support rethinking how the city evaluates the applications for office space in private buildings. Transparency and accountability must be top priority. Taxpayers should be protected, and the public deserves to know how decisions are made. Those recommendations brings us closer to planning process that centers fairness, community, and accountability. I urge the commission to adopt those fully, and I remain committed to working alongside you to ensure that the voices of Bronx residents, and even more importantly, residents of District 16 and all New Yorkers are heard and respected in our city land use decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Riley.
Thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me? Thank you. So good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chair Garrido and the entire board. Thank you for coming to the Bronx to do this today. I'm Councilmember Kevin Riley, representing the 12th Council District in the Bronx, which includes Williamsbridge, Olinville, Bronxwood, Eastchester, Edenwald, Baychester, Wakefield, Alton, Parkside, Baychester, which I said already, the Valley, and Co-op City. I'm the chairperson of the subcommittee on zoning and franchises and the co-chair of the Black, Latino, and Asian caucus. Both are roles where I aim to advance policies that will help us to achieve a more equitable city. I'm happy to be here with the Bronx testifying about land use before the commission to strengthen local democracy. During the last several years serving as the chair of the subcommittee on zoning and franchise, I've heard countless hours of testimony from New Yorkers across the city responding to development proposals that impact their communities. While the not in my backyard or NIMBY voices are certainly present at our hearings, they are not the only voices heard. There are many people who recognize that our city in the midst of a housing crisis and understand the need to build more housing. However, my constituents and residents in each of the city community boards, many communities are also experiencing other challenges on a daily basis. So yes, we definitely need to build more housing, but housing alone is not enough. We must approach building housing more comprehensively and address community needs with investments in supportive services, such as a sewer infrastructure, open spaces, schools, libraries, and public transportation. Not all neighborhoods have the same needs, but these supporting investments must be tailored accordingly through a community-focused planning process. Our city currently approaches the planning in piecemeals and does not center our communities. During my time as chair of this subcommittee, over 100 smaller site-specific proposals have come to us for approval as a part of a EULA process. But we have only had 2 neighborhood planning proposals, one which I just voted on today, which is AIM Up in Brooklyn. While the City of Yes text amendments brought much more needed updates to our zoning resolution, we need to put more resources in comprehensive, community-centered rezoning at the neighborhood level. I assure you that when you meaningfully engage our communities and pursue a comprehensive strategy in terms of infrastructure and services along the side of creating more housing, our communities are collaborated partners. We are seeing this with AIM Up, and we also seeing this with the Jamaica rezoning proposal. I am pleased to see that the commission staff is recommending to strengthen the Fair Housing Framework law passed by the council in 2023. I support changes to the charter and will require the Department of City Plan to focus their neighborhood planning efforts in areas of the city that are not meaningfully contributing to housing stock. If we are going to effectively tackle the housing crisis, all communities need to pitch in, and to do this, neighborhood rezoning process needs to be strengthened and better resourced. I just have one more sentence to go. The council will always be in much better position to support rezoning proposals that look holistically at a neighborhood, especially in parts of the city that are not doing their fair share of creating housing opportunities. An equitable approach to neighborhood planning will be key to solving the housing crisis. I would like to thank the commission and looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony. We'll stop there. We're going to take questions from the commissioners who may have. Anyone would like to ask any questions? The Commissioner Pastor.
I'll start with you, Borough President, but to any of the council members as well. Thank you all for your testimony. It was very thoughtful. Borough President, I've always experienced you as a thoughtful leader on development. And you addressed sort of the unfair burden that the Bronx was experiencing in shelters. And I think there's the reverse, that sometimes the city will work on how we address affordable housing, and when we give subsidies, how we have community benefits that are associated with those subsidies. And again, I think you've always been thoughtful about this. And right now there's a system in place. The mayor's office has a role, the city council has a role, community boards and others have roles. And I guess just in the biggest picture, is there something you would change either specifically or in the balance of decision-making of where that happens to help move both the burdens, make them better, or the positives make them better? Either one.
Right. Well, I absolutely believe in neighborhood studies, and that's why we suggested a 197A plan. I was a part of that effort in Community Board 5 when I was a staffer years ago. And when I was in the city council, I was a part of the Jerome Avenue neighborhood plan in Community Board 4 and 5. And we created a neighborhood. We knew we wanted to achieve 4,000 to 5,000 new units of housing, but we knew we could not do that without investing in parks, open spaces, some of our existing cultural institutions, our schools. We were able to get 2 brand new schools in community District 9 and District 10, and we got close to $250 million, and that included park upgrades, DOT infrastructure work, because you have to invest in the community before you welcome the new residents. And I think sometimes we don't always understand that, and residents don't understand that sometimes the investments of capital comes with the rezoning or comes with the new development. It should come before, because many of our neighborhoods and communities are starving for resources right now before there's any new development, any rezoning, and any 197A plan. And I think the city has to look very holistically across the community to see what is there, what is lacking, and really get a lot of input from the local stakeholders, including the community boards and neighborhood advisory boards. So if given the opportunity, I definitely appreciate council members talking about supporting the community boards in a real way. We've been very intentional in appointing urban planners and architects and everyone that brings a different experience to the community board, because not everyone understands what a ULURP is, nor do they understand how this process works. So we've been trying to strengthen boards in that regard, but overall, all 59 need help. And then as borough president, understanding the process, because I was a former member of the New York City Council, and I know the final decision weighs with the individual council member and the larger body, but I definitely appreciate that as borough president, we get to make recommendations. I would love our recommendations to hold a little bit more weight as we send them to the City Planning Commission. And we're given 30 days. That's another conversation. But we try to be very, very intentional when we make recommendations on making the proposal better, looking across the board, because we think the uniqueness of all of our neighborhoods are important, but we also know that what we're trying to do is not take away from the character. We're trying to add more value to our neighborhoods because they're already valuable. And we believe that with new housing, home ownership, new schools, new businesses, supermarkets, it just makes the neighborhood that more attractive for the current residents and potential new residents.
All right.
Thank you.
So Commissioner.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your testimony. And this question is for you as well, Borough President Gibson. It's always easier for me, not being a land use expert myself, to sort of flesh this out in some kind of context. And so when you brought up the example of the migrant shelter, for instance, that was, in the way you described, sort of imposed on a particular community, could you just describe if balancing for emergency situations that oftentimes don't allow for, a full process in that situation, how should it have gone down? If it happened in the way that you would like, how would that process have gone down and what would have been the result?
So in this instance, what we would have appreciated in Community Board 1, when the Adams administration made an announcement about closing some of the HERCs across our city, particularly Floyd Bennett and Randall's Island and other parts of our city, we were not sure where many of the single adult men would go. And what would have been helpful for us as a borough is to understand that, yes, Borough President, Council Member, Community Board 1, there is a possibility that we're going to open up a migrant facility because we want to take the outdoor infrastructure that's tents and we want to put the population in one central location that is a building and a structure and provide all of the support and resources that are necessary. I understand that. In this instance, the administration was negotiating with the property owner for months. And not until there was an actual agreement and terms of a potential contract that would be awarded were we notified. And how we were notified was really unacceptable. It was through the media. There was a Daily News article that broke that weekend saying that we were getting a shelter, and we were like, what do you mean? What's happening? Now, there were rumors spreading and circulating through the community, but we were not aware officially, nor were we told. And so after that article, then a series of conversations started to happen with City Hall about what transpired over the last several months and how we were not involved. I think generally residents understand that there is a crisis. We will always be sympathetic of that. But what we are not sympathetic of is feeling that you're pushing a location in our community without any regard for who we are, business owners, property owners, landlords, tenants. And what I would have appreciated in this instance, a facility of that scale, 2,200 is a lot of people in one building. It's a very big building. We didn't add any additional offices, the 4-0 precinct. We didn't do anything on the ground to even let people know. And that to me is unacceptable. So what I would have appreciated is more advance notice. Now, I'm not saying that our positions would have changed with regard to a proper notification and how that's defined. I know the process of an emergency status, an emergency declaration where there's an executive order. I get all of that. And I try to explain that to residents, but to find out in the newspaper is unacceptable. And no one would ever accept that. And certainly in the Bronx, we did not.
Thank you. I believe Councilwoman Narcisse has his hand out. And for those of you who are still on Zoom, the commissioners cannot see you on the screen unless you raise your hand. So Councilwoman Narcisse?
Question to the commissioner, what can we do to avoid the bait and switches that taking place? Myself, I propose that when there's intended use of a rezoned property changes, it must be brought back to the community board, the board president office, and the city planning commission and the city council. In other words, the same points that of approval that we granted in the original zoning changes should be involved again. The same group should be involved again when the use of the scope of the project shifts. Does that make sense to you?
Okay, Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you, Councilmember Narcisse. To your question, I guess what I to understand better, are you asking that as part of ULURP that we sort of lock in the intended use, that rather than change the zoning, we change the zoning and also codify the intended use as part of the ULURP, so that if there is a change in the intended use, it sort of restarts the ULURP process? Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Yep, that's exactly where I'm going. Because I feel like as a process took place, people got engaged, community board voted, and then without your knowledge, it's a bait and switch. You need to tell me it's affordable housing, and then you can actually change the whole process and something else totally that's not part of the conversation coming up in the community. So that the trust, that's what I'm trying to build in the community, so people can trust the government. When we say a process, we voted on a process, someone else cannot just decided to do whatever they want to. I think it's disrespectful to all of us that got involved. The community, the city council members, the board president, everyone that got involved to get the process going.
And would you say this is a common circumstance that happens as part of these ULURPs? Is this something you've seen more than one location?
From my understanding, it's been happening and people talk about it and let it go. For my community, it's been intense for the past few months. It's just like constantly people are upset and angry for different reasons, but the bait and switch is the biggest problem that we're facing. We try, if we get people involved, the community, we tell them to trust the process, and then we can do that. So there's a mistrust right now. People cannot trust the government when we say things.
All right, Commissioner Jones.
Good evening. For the council members or borough president, I think part of my question is, given that we want to get the city to the point of planning, it may take a while to get there. A part of my question is the thought that we need to add more services to match the populations? Given that most of the projects that are done, I think as the borough president Gibson said, it's related to the cost of land. And so I'm imagining that the projects can't stop in total. Is part of the thinking around services to match the populations and the other resources and infrastructure? Or is it just about fair share?
And that goes for any of the other council members who testified. I don't know if you're still on, certainly Councilmember Stevens and Councilman Riley, if you're still on, you can also opine on this.
For me, I mean, it's not I did not bring that up, but I think it's very important to make the investment before a big project comes, because most of the community are overburdened with what's going on as it is. In terms of infrastructure, we know that's going on. And my whole area is a coastal area. So for flooding and all that, the investment that would be made first prior to the new development to make the community keep on thriving and do the best they can.
Thank you. And I just want to let the record show that we've been joined by Commissioner Longley. Serena Longley, would you like to?
Sure. Good
Greetings.
evening, everybody.
Evening.
My name's Serena Longley. I'm appointed to the commission by New York City Speaker Speaker of the City
Adrian.
Council, Adrian Adams. Sorry, it's been a rush here from work, so I'm like nonstop. I'm
All right.
happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Commissioner. Thank you all for your testimony. We're going to move to the following panel, led by Councilwoman Amanda Farias. And what about?
Can I begin?
Hang on, we're trying to. Oh, all right. Is that him? Okay. Welcome, Councilwoman Farias. So good to see you. Saludos. You can start your testimony.
Great to see you too, and thank you, everyone. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Amanda Farias, and I proudly serve as the majority leader of the New York City Council, and I get the honor and privilege of representing District 18 in the Bronx. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on a critical topic of housing and land use. New York City is facing a housing crisis that demands bold, smart solutions. As we consider changes to the charter, we must protect and strengthen the tools that allow communities to meaningfully shape their futures. Chief among them is the City Council's role in the ULURP process. The charter gave the council land use authority to correct a long history of top-down decisions that truly disenfranchised Black and Brown communities, concentrated poverty, and deepened racial segregation. While we have made progress, our neighborhoods remain deeply unequal. Many communities, particularly in the Bronx, still lack access to affordable housing, public transit, and critical infrastructure. That's why local leadership must remain central to any conversation about land use, and especially its decisions. As council members, we are the closest level of government to the people. We don't just represent our neighborhoods, we live in them. We see firsthand the challenges our constituents face, and we are best positioned to balance the needs of developers, tenants, homeowners, and businesses alike. That's why, and that's what makes our role in ULURP so valuable. We help mediate divergent interests and forge compromises that make development possible while ensuring that our communities are not left behind. The results speak for themselves. Since 2022, this council has approved land use applications that will produce over 120,000 homes, including nearly 29,000 from private applications, more than half of which are affordable. That level of affordability would not have happened without council advocacy. Beyond housing, the council has secured billions of dollars in public and private investments, from neighborhood rezonings to community benefits like childcare centers, job training, and cultural space. An excellent example of the leverage that ULURP provides to local communities was the Bronx Metro North Area Neighborhood Plan that passed in the City Council last summer. My office worked closely with council planning and land use to create multiple community engagement sessions where we had meaningful conversations with our neighbors. Through the community agreement, In the Euler process, we secured nearly 195 million for District 18 alone, and a nearly 500 million deal with the city that brought multiple neighborhood investments. This is what can be achieved through neighborhood planning that comes alongside meaningful community engagement. I support the staff's recommendation to the commission to promote more neighborhood planning in areas of the city that are found not to be doing their fair share of housing production according to the reporting requirements from the Fair Housing Framework Law Plan and reports. This would enable council members to get involved in planning work with their communities to identify areas for housing growth, determine neighborhood investments, and build community buy-in. Can I ask the commission for about 30 more seconds?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I am also pleased to see the staff recommending more transparency and efficiency in the pre-certification phase of ULURP. Despite claims to the contrary, ULURP is not the bottleneck. The real delays happen in the pre-certification phase where applications can sit for years in environmental review, a process over which the council has no control. And even after ULURP, many approved projects wait years for HPD financing. If we want to speed up housing, we need to focus on fixing those parts of the pipeline, not gutting council oversight. I recommend the commission look further into providing transparency in the pre-certification phase by defining a timeline and exploring more options for feedback in this process from affordable housing developers and advocates alongside DCP. Charter reform should be about empowering communities, not disempowering them. It should reflect our shared values, equity, transparency, and meaningful engagement. I appreciate your time for listening to my testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Councilmember Farias. Good to see you. Judging from your testimony, I wanted to get your thoughts on, do you think that the Euler process as it currently exists, is it striking the right balance in your mind between the needs of individual communities and the broader needs of the city for more housing, more social services? Are we striking the right balance?
I would say the ULURP process in terms of the timeline and the approval process with how it goes through its multiple steps, I think serves the right purpose. The larger part that I think inhibits community engagement or involvement really comes to how meaningfully we engage the community board in their approval process, or even a proper timeline for when it's on Department of City Planning side in order to and have some engagement. The example I gave with the Metro North redevelopment plan, I mean, I came into this project as a newly elected member where it had already had 5 to 7 years of, quote unquote, community engagement. But when it really came to it, folks were really only engaged on knowing the timeline for when the stops were going to be, the train stops were going to be developed. It had nothing to do, meaningfully at least, with the housing and which developers were engaged and what type of community benefit can come from it. And then I think on the other end, I have multiple properties throughout my district, and one that comes to mind is 255 Soundview Avenue, where again, it's been a huge empty, vacant block and lot that, gets illegal dumping and all of these other things. But it's been 2 years since we engaged the developer to begin a process to engage community. And we had them at the table, but we're still waiting on environmental review to come back. So I do think we end up losing folks' buy-in in community because we don't improve the engagement, nor do we stick to a tight timeline to have the buy-in that we have, we end up losing.
Yeah, Councilwoman, I have a follow-up question. Can you tell us about your experience of any projects that having stopped in your district, or any other districts that you're aware of that has been stuck in the pre-certification process of the ULURP?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two examples I just gave, Metro North redevelopment hadn't moved for about 7 years until I came into office, from what I understand. 255 Soundview Avenue in my district, we are still waiting. I think, if I'm being generous, probably saying 1.5 years of environmental review. I think it's longer than that. And that's just the development of housing. You know, when you look at even the modernization of housing and how people get held up with HPD or DOB and that processes, whether that's, you know, upzoning areas or just doing upgrades, there's an entire system that gets delayed there. I mean, I have a couple of capital projects, and this is, I know, different from ULURP, but still involving in keeping people within their homes and keeping people that are on fixed income, keeping their fees and their maintenance fees and their HOA fees low. You know, I have multiple projects that are stuck 2-3 years in the making. I have worked on an 8-story federal SARA program, 8-story senior housing project in Soundview with a church, where a church completely redeveloped their block and lot to build this housing and a community center and their church back. And that is 3 years where we can't get a closing date. I mean, there's various issues, and that's just like my district alone, where I can name, you know, a little less than a handful of projects, you know, that is reflective of what's happening across the city times 10.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, council member, for your testimony. And one of the, I guess, tensions that has come up in a number of people's testimony is the balance of having local control and local input, and then also ensuring that everybody does their fair share in terms like that. And I guess the question is, how do you get the right balance of something that's really a citywide issue, like making sure that, you know, you can't solve one borough or one district not doing their fair share from a community involved process. And on the other hand, if you come up with a centralized comprehensive plan, you're going to lose some of the community input. And I guess just thinking about the balance of those two things, where you might fall, or things that we might be doing to help that get that right.
Yeah, I mean, I would push back a little and say, I think the more community involvement and giving education around what land use is, the more people can feel ownership of projects. I mean, you know, my district was really disconnected to the Metro North redevelopment plan. I would say we did a lot of work on helping people understand why we needed to build taller versus create density in a wider scale. I think with more education on the processes and with more education on why developments end up looking like they do and how community benefit comes through some of these projects, I mean, people immediately bought in and felt like co-ownership of the process and why we needed to build. I understand that there's always going to be tensions with what type of housing and where should it be built. But I do think because we don't necessarily educate constituency on the process itself and what's reflective of their district and how like their district can be included to solving the problem, I think that's how we end up losing folks and feeling a larger disconnect citywide. But I do think generally in New York City, people do believe in others having shelter and finding homes and building generational wealth. I mean, that's literally what a lot of people come to New York City to do or move out to the outer boroughs to do. You know, the Bronx is not, the Bronx is included in that process of families wanting to build generational wealth. It's why they moved out and came to my borough and are looking for communities that have local parks and local institutions. And those are the same people that want their kids to have apartments or homes to move into to stay in the area and want their parents to not go into a senior home and be able to live independently in a 1-bedroom apartment. So I think we really have to look at how we're educating folks on the process and why there's a need, and even on the developments themselves. I would say maybe I'm one of the lucky few that's had really great engagement locally and has had really great buy-in from community. And I hope to keep doing that as I continue my term in the council. But I think we really need to look at the community engagement process and how do we use our land use committees in each of the community boards to leverage that education piece and that inclusion.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, Councilwoman. It's good to see you. We're going to call the next panel. It's Chauncey Young, Samira Lavingia, and Roxanne Delgado. You can come up to the table, please. Yeah, so we missed it. Sorry. Mr. Young, would you start?
Great. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chauncey Young. I'm a resident of the Highbridge neighborhood of the Bronx. I coordinate the Harlem River Coalition, formerly the Harlem River Working Group. I'm on the Board of Directors of the Bronx Council for Environmental Quality, and I'm Director of Education Organizing at New Settlement Parent Action Committee. I thank you for the opportunity to address the critical issue of land use and its profound impact on the strength and equity of our city and our democracy. How we decide to use our land reflects our values, and for too long, these decisions have not been equitably serving all New Yorkers, particularly in the vibrant communities of the Bronx. For generations, communities across our city, especially in the Bronx, have faced systematic inequities in the distribution of resources and funding for land use. This has resulted in a stark imbalance: fewer accessible, high-quality parks and open spaces where children can play and families can gather, a lack of green infrastructure to mitigate the impacts of climate change, such as heat islands and flooding, which disproportionately affect these neighborhoods, and limited, often non-existent public access to our beautiful waterfronts, which are instead dominated by industrial use or luxury development that prices out long-term residents. This isn't just about aesthetics, it's about justice. It's about public health, environmental resilience, and economic opportunity. The children of the South Bronx deserve the same access to clean air, green play spaces, and cooling tree canopies as children in more affluent parts of our city. Our neighborhoods in University Heights, Highbridge, Hunts Point, Mont Haven, and Port Morris deserve waterfronts that serve their communities, offer recreation and ecological benefits, and connect to our waterfronts, not just as corridors for commerce that bypass them. To truly strengthen local democracy, we must embed equity in every fabric of our land use planning and investment. This means equitable resource allocation, prioritizing community-driven green spaces, investing in green energy for the future, investing in green infrastructure for resilience, and unlocking the waterfront potential for all. The Bronx has a rich history and a vibrant future. Its residents deserve land use policies that reflect their values and address their needs. By prioritizing equity in how we plan, fund, and develop our shared land, this commission can help build a more just, resilient, and democratic New York City for every community in every borough. Thank you. I have more detailed letter that I'll include in my submission.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Samir Lavingia, and I'm the campaign coordinator at Open New York, an independent grassroots pro-housing nonprofit with hundreds of volunteer members across the city and state. Thank you for taking the time to consider critical issues, especially today when focusing on land use. New York City's housing affordability crisis is rooted in the fact that we simply do not build enough homes. Displacement, exclusion, tenant harassment, and homelessness are all exacerbated by our dire housing shortage. For far too long, many of the most well-resourced parts of the city have been essentially off limits to new homes, driving up rents and reinforcing long-standing patterns of segregation. Requirements in the city charter shape how and where housing is built, and with housing production at historic lows, we must seize the opportunity to reform the charter to help make New York more livable for all. We're excited that the commission's preliminary staff report highlighted problems in the land use process that are controlled by the charter. The report's first section on land use specifically highlighted the council's Fair Housing Framework Law and potential ways that an improved charter could make the Fair Housing Framework stronger. In February, Open New York released a policy brief titled "A Charter for Housing Equity: 5 Reforms for a Fairer, More Affordable New York City." Our top recommendation is called the Fast Track for Fair Housing, which would tie the Fair Housing Framework's neighborhood-based housing targets to changes in the charter to get around hyper-local opposition to new affordable housing. We need a new approval process for that which would advance fair housing in our most transit-rich, climate-resilient, and low-growth neighborhoods in line with the implementation of Speaker Adams's Fair Housing Framework. In these well-resourced neighborhoods, we must fast-track approvals and remove the ability for a local council member to block new homes. Such reforms are common sense in other states, often known as builders' remedies. However, New York is far behind. Open New York's brief, which we'll submit to the commission in full as well, includes many other recommendations for improving the charter's relationship to housing growth. We have a rare chance to reform the charter so every New Yorker has a fair shot at living where they choose, and we look forward to continuing work with the commission in the coming few months, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I didn't, I guess I'll wait.
Wait,
the
we're gonna
clock
start over.
resets.
Right.
Okay, I didn't prepare anything in advance. My name is Roxanne Delgado. I'm speaking from my experience on 2560 Boston Road, Allerton. And this commission is to strengthen democracy for local land, for land use. So the previous speaker is not strengthening democracy. Local input is very important. This is why a lot of people don't participate in the ULUP process from community board level up to the city council. A hearing is because they say they're going to do it anyhow. This perception or misperception is why we don't have community involvement in, especially in the Bronx. When you ignore people over and over again, they stop coming. Simple as that. Second, I'm speaking regarding bait and switch. I have to concur with the council member who said often we have project proposed like 2560 Boston Road. And once we find out that it's gonna be taller, not as affordable, I contact city planning. They said, oh, we have nothing to do with it. We already approved it. I contact the council member, city council, they said, oh, it was done under previous council member Velasquez, nothing we can do about it. I contact HPD, Ted Weinstein. He's not very transparent. So basically, I'm bumping my head against walls. So we have to make sure when rezoning is conditional based on what was proposed and approved on. Regarding the racial equity report, well, I noticed that when with 2560 Boston Road, the racial equity report was based on PUMA, the whole community report 11, which increased the area median income. But when you look at the EAS, it's based on the 0.5 radius and 1 mile radius around the proposed site. That's a totally lower area median income. Regarding Allerton, it was one of the most affordable place to live for newly arrived immigrants and people starting a family, 1 bed with 1,500. Regarding 2560 Boston Road, that won't be the case. Studios we go starting at 1,500 and the income requirement is at least 100,000. Most people that the area median income for Allerton is less than 45,000. But with the PUMA, it brought up with the 55,000 because of the homeowners around Morris Park, Indian Village. So we have to make sure the racial equity report is aligned with the EAS report. Don't use two apple oranges. PUMA versus the site, the study on the site radius. So that's very important for me, anyhow. I'd like to mention that building more housing. Allerton, when you look at 2560, a city planning website, it has the highest displacement rate because, first of all, it has 7% of tenants, low income, rent burden, no rental protection. So by building more unaffordable housing, like this project, it will accelerate the rental income. So not more housing does not mean lower income, lower affordable housing. Actually accelerate the displacement. You can't stop displacement, but this was happening under this administration by special interest, by saying more housing, is actually making things unaffordable for most of us in Pelham Parkway and Allerton Avenue. I thank you for your time. Sorry, I was not prepared.
Thank you all for your testimony. I believe Commissioner Wu, you have do you have a question for this panel? Or was that for the previous?
No, that was for the previous panel with Majority Leader Farias about community education. I think, this is the hill I will die on about language access and including our communities and making sure that they understand what their rights are and how they can participate. Having gone through a few ULIPs myself, the people who live in the community are always the last to know. And so, I think we have a language access mandate in the city. And I think that's something that we really do have to hold the city accountable to. And so I just wanted to echo Majority Leader Farias's points.
All right, thank you. I apologize. I didn't see you until afternoon.
No worries.
So, any questions, commissioners? Go ahead.
Thank you all for your testimony. And my question really is for each of you, you each give a vision of things you'd like to see done differently. But I guess for us sitting here, we have to think about what is it that we would change in the charter to help reach a vision, whether it's having more parks and having that, whether it's having what I took you to say as a longer term planning process or address some of the concerns. I think we all want to see changes and improvements, but the question for us that we're facing is what about to the vision you would like to get to, what we should be changing in the charter? And if that is a little too technical, like what specific changes, just where the problems lie and where we should make improvements?
And can I just do a friendly amendment to that? Because remember, keep in mind that part of our challenge here as a commission is not put something that could be changed by local law, right? So if there's a law that could be changed or an application of an administrative problem like the one I hear you went through, Ms. Delgado, would not be something that would be up to the voters, right? So we're looking at like the grander view of the charter and how that applies to an important process and part of that process about community input. So if you could just put that through that lens, because part of our role is going to be try to look at those big picture items that could not be amended by local law.
And I thank you for that. First, regarding administrative tweak, the racial equity report was passed by city council. So we do need to amend it where it will actually require it to the same study site of radius will be the same as EAS report instead of using Puma. Because actually, in most cases, increase the area median income, and then that means that they're not actually triggered by EIS report. So that's administrative. But regarding the city charter, I'm not a lawyer, but something that will make the zoning conditional if the proposal for a bait and switch issue, not just a homeless shelter. I'm not just against homeless shelter, that it's not affordable for the community and will actually accelerate displacement. Thank you.
Yeah, any other?
I don't want to go too much into specifics because we're limited on time, but we have put out a policy brief and I'll make sure to follow up with that has specific recommendations.
Thank you.
Several points I could go into, but I think I'll just say that around, as the council member had mentioned earlier, when we're voting on something ULURP and then having that change, that does impact a lot of projects. I've seen that happen before. I also mentioned around alienation. We've had that impact our neighborhood here significantly with Yankee Stadium and with several parks alienations, which have taken parks and turned them into affordable housing, something that would not happen in other parts of the city. But we've lost, I can say in just a short time, I've been here for 20 years, I've seen at least 10 acres of parkland be turned into other uses, mainly affordable housing, and that would happen almost nowhere else in the city.
Anyone else? Questions? All right, want to thank you all three for your testimony. If you have anything that you want to follow up, since you mentioned that, could you please make sure we get it? All right, thank you. All right, we're gonna call the fourth panel. Robin Rowland, Jennifer Holton, and Michelle De La Cruz. De La Cruz? That can't be. Okay. All right. They're on Zoom. Jennifer, Michelle, Robin. All right, we'll start with Michelle De La Cruz. Michelle, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify and for your service on the commission. My name is Michelle De La Cruz. I'm the Executive Director of the Fifth Avenue Committee. Fifth Avenue Committee is a 47-year-old nonprofit comprehensive community development corporation whose mission is to advance economic, social, and racial justice in New York City. Over the course of our history, we've built over 1,500 units of affordable housing. We have an affordable housing development pipeline of over 2,000 units. I'm also a former member of the New York City Planning Commission, and Fifth Avenue Committee organized the community coalition that led to the an equitable rezoning of the Gowanus neighborhood. I'm going to kind of focus on some very narrow things that perhaps have some broad implications for the commission to consider. So the other thing I'll just mention is Fifth Avenue Committee has also been involved in a number of community benefits agreements. I share this just as background. So if you want to ask any questions afterwards, feel free. My recommendations are going to focus on ensuring our public processes are facilitating an equitable, inclusive, and sustainable city. The first recommendation is that we require a comprehensive plan for the city of New York that has equity, inclusion, and sustainability at its core. I believe that comprehensive planning would address both legitimate community concerns and address the city's need for more housing and, importantly, affordable housing. Absent a comprehensive plan, in council districts that are not meeting production targets as outlined in the Fair Housing Framework recently passed by the council, I recommend that ULURP end at the City Planning Commission. Focusing specifically on 100% affordable housing projects, I recommend exempting the disposition of city-owned land for affordable housing that conforms with underlying zoning from ULURP. I believe there are other ways to get meaningful input and collaboration between the community and council members beyond ULURP. And then finally, for city-sponsored neighborhood rezonings, I believe we should require a community-controlled oversight task force, similar to what we have in Gowanus, to ensure that the commitments that the city makes as part of rezonings are implemented in a collaborative fashion with the community. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony. Ms. Rowland, Robin Rowland? Or Robin Rowland? Think it's frozen. Can you unmute yourself? Go ahead. We can't hear you.
Good.
Yeah, we can't hear you. We're gonna come back to you in a moment, so see if we can so let me turn it over to Jennifer Holton. Halfon, I'm sorry.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jennifer Halfon. It's Halfon. How are you?
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm a resident of Brooklyn, CB 15, Community Board 15. And I am, we went through a process where we approved affordable housing in a certain location, Coyle Street. And after that, it was switched, and now it's becoming something else. I, as a resident, I think that when you rezone an area and you give the developer to do what he suggested at the CB 15, at the city zoning commission, he suggested one thing and he went ahead and did something else. I think that residents feel betrayed by the system. And that betrayal could be very much avoided if a less pendants is put on the property once the developer asks for rezoning. And when I say less pendants, means if you came around and you asked for 7-story affordable housing, and that is what you're going to build, that is what the deed will say. If you came around and said, I want to build a 7-story luxury condominium, then the less pendants will be put on the property that says that he's going to build a 7-story luxury condominium. That is the process, because when you bring people into community boards, residents like me, like my neighbor, like anybody that lives in the area, and you tell them this is what this rezoning is going to do, which means that this is what it's going to do. How do you stop the developer from switching and doing something else? The only way to do that is to put a less pendants on the property.
All right, can you repeat that last part? I think we lost the sound.
To put a less pendants. The same way a private home cannot turn into a commercial area, commercial residency. I cannot turn my private home into a shopping mall because my zoning won't allow it.
Well,
When you rezone an area or you rezone a certain block, you're giving permission to that developer to rezone that specific area for the development that he requested and went around and asked the neighborhood, the councilwoman, the citizens, all the people surrounding that area. And all those people agreed to whatever the developer said, whether it was one thing or another. But to give the developer the free hand to do what he wants after the rezoning was done is not the correct. It needs to have some kind of a less pendants or some kind of statement in the deed saying this is what you're going to be developing. Not here you go. Here we rezoned your C4 into a C8 and go ahead and do whatever you want to do. That's not fair to the community that you actually asked to come and vote. You also have to consider the community. Those people pay their real estate taxes. They pay every tax, pay mortgages. So wouldn't you, as commissioners, like to know what is going to be next door to you once it was rezoned?
yeah, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I think unfortunately we are short on time. We have a hard stop at 7 o'clock. I just
Hey,
wanna-
I'm here.
Okay, Robin Roland, okay.
Hi. Hi, my statements are general. I'm a board member of Community Board 7 and a board member of the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition, but my statements are completely my own. I'm a lifelong resident of the Bronx. I live on Kingsbridge, in the Kingsbridge area. I've been living there for about 20 years. I've lived on Webster Avenue, 183rd. I grew up there. And what concerns me is as mentioned by others, the proliferation of buildings and housing, but not services and resources for the community. And I see all these buildings going up. I see people sleeping on the street. I see people strung out on drugs. I see a lot of sanitation problems. It's overwhelming. And then I'm thinking, what is going to happen when all these buildings are occupied? We definitely need to have the resources to sustain all of this development, and not just resources, also building for the community of the future, the children. There are not enough spaces for children to not just educational but recreational, also places where they can stimulate their mental and psychological growth. So we need to be more creative about spaces for the young people to not just have jobs, but develop thinkers, people who, and also psychological growth in these communities. What hasn't been talked about, the elephant in the room, a lot of times what happens is it's about money, it's about developers. The community is pushed aside, particularly communities that have lesser income. We're pretty much silent, and unfortunately a lot of people do not attend these meetings because they don't know about it. They're too busy trying to work, and also they feel disenfranchised. They are disenfranchised anyway, and there has to be more which was talked about. Really educating people and making it a regular thing for the community group, large numbers of the community. I feel, in my opinion, a lot of times it is not really wanted, because when these people come and see what's really going on, they will have actual opinions and develop, and that is not for the forces that be with the money and the influence that want to have their agenda imposed on communities, particularly those without the excessive resources and knowledge of what's going on. So, and those are my general opinions, and I'll have more in a written statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for any of these members of the panel? Go ahead.
So, Mr. Luz, thank you all for your testimony. And my question for you is that you said that you thought that the way I heard it was to sort of remove this official city council part of the ULURP process. And I guess the way I've experienced the city council in the ULURP process has been to actually push for more affordable housing, to push for community standards, to push for worker standards who are going to be in the buildings and bringing in a community voice to that. And I guess I'm interested in what you see as the concern in that process and how you'd make improvements.
Mr. La Luz, that was for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
Okay, a question was posed about your testimony regarding the process. Would you like to repeat your question,
Sure.
Commissioner?
I was asking, what I heard you say is that you thought that it made sense to remove the city council part of the ULURP process. And I was interested in the way I've experienced the city council process is bringing in community voices, often pushing for more affordable housing, and looking at standards, including worker standards. And so I see you shaking your head, so maybe I misheard you, but I guess I'm interested in where you see as the city council process and how to, whether it's currently working or ways to make it better.
Thank you for the question and repeating it. What I said first was that I believe we have to have a comprehensive plan for the city of New York. And I think one that certainly engages community members across the city, but balances local needs with citywide needs. I said that absent a comprehensive plan, that if there's a proposal for development, residential development, a council member's district, where that council district is not meeting any outlined goals related to the recently passed fair share plan that the council passed, that in that instance, and in that instance only, should the ULURP process end at the City Planning Commission rather than move forward to the council. So it's in that narrow instance.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? All right, thank you all for your testimony. We're going to move to the next panel. Thank you. Justina Rosinski, Victoria Phillips, and Jennifer Parrish. They're on Zoom. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to.
Sorry, can you speak directly into the
Yes.
mic? 'Cause it's hard to hear.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Justina Rosinski, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a PhD candidate with over a decade of experience working with people impacted by the criminal legal system. From December 2023 to September 2024, I was a clinical supervisor on Rikers Island, overseeing 2 mental health units where individuals with severe mental illness were housed. During that time, I witnessed alarming human rights violations, people with serious mental health conditions deadlocked in their cells for weeks or months, denied basic care like medication, showers, and human contact. Officers use this undocumented system to isolate individuals without clinical justification. They would place a white tag on the control panel so everyone would know not to let these individuals out. It was punishment, not treatment. And these were real people, their families with stories abandoned by a system that was supposed to help them. And I carry the weight of what I witnessed and I feel a deep responsibility to speak out. Because of their severe mental illness, they decompensated to the point of smearing feces, banging, screaming all day and night. And this is how they woke up and went to sleep in those cells filled with feces. And this is personal. I think about them every day, the ones I couldn't help and the ones I have to leave behind. I speak today not just as a clinician, but someone who refuses to forget what I witnessed. Every person deadlocked without cause, every person denied basic care is someone the system failed and someone we must fight for. And we have the power to stop this, but only if we are willing to act. I'm here because I cannot be silent while people continue to suffer. I'm here because those still locked away are waiting for someone to care enough to change this. I testified about this on October 8th, 2024 in front of the Board of Corrections. While the board said it would investigate, no action followed. The Board of Correction is meant to be the last line of defense, yet without proper staffing, independence, or authority, it cannot fulfill that role. With more staff and real oversight, the ongoing use of deadlocking and inhumane treatment could be addressed. Until then, the suffering continues. While working on Rikers, I have never witnessed a BOC employee come to visit the unit. Therefore, it is crucial that they have more staff to see what is actually happening behind those closed doors. That's why I'm urging you to support critical changes to the New York City Charter to give the board the power it needs. These reforms include expanding capacity, set the board's budget at no less than 1% of BOCs, allowing them to increase staff from 32 to at least 60 to 100. Require active oversight, mandate regular jail tours, prompt response to in-custody deaths, and consistent engagement with judges, defenders, and prosecutors. Diversify appointments to include formerly incarcerated people, family members, and medical professionals, and distribute appointment power beyond just the mayor. And provide compensation for board members. Ensure members receive fair compensation for their time and responsibilities. And grant enforcement power. Authorize the board to shut down unsafe units and in extreme cases seek to release individuals subjected to prolonged inhumane conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Parrish. I'm also here to talk about the need for changes in the Board of Correction in the charter. So I work at the Urban Justice Center Mental Health Project, and I'm also a member of the Jails Action Coalition and the Halt Solitary campaign. At the Mental Health Project, we represent all of the people who are incarcerated who are diagnosed as needing mental health treatment. That's about 57% of the people in the jails, and 1,400 of them have serious mental illness, including schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. We believe that the charter needs to be changed to allow the Board of Correction more oversight over the department. And we think that should be done in 3 ways. One is enhance their capacity. Second, to provide more independence for them and also give them more authority. They currently have about 30 staff members. That's 30 staff members for a system that incarcerates more than 2,400 people, that has 7 jails at Rikers Island, plus 2 prison wards in local hospitals, and holding areas in all of the borough courthouses. So certainly that small of staff cannot provide the kind of oversight that we need. In addition, the staff not only monitors whether the department is following the minimum standards that the board sets, they can also resolve issues on the ground that come up. And for people, especially in these mental health units, as Justina was referring to, oftentimes they can't even make their complaints known to people outside the jail. So having board staff in the jails that can monitor conditions there is critically important to prevent exactly what she just described about people being locked for days, months, weeks in their cells. Also, the board has mental health minimum standards. These were written in the mid 1980s and have not been updated since then. Certainly, the jail population of people with mental health needs has expanded during that period of time, and those need to be overhauled. So we believe that having a budget that's tied to the Department of Corrections budget, we're saying 1% of their expense budget is critical. That would allow them to increase their staff, not only to be able to do the monitoring inside, but write the reports that need to be done. This would also give them some independence from the mayor. That's another piece. Right now, the mayor appoints 3 people, the council appoints 3 people, and then the appellate division courts have 3 appointments, but that still goes through the mayor. Oftentimes, the courts are completely disconnected with what's going on at Rikers. So in effect, the mayor also appoints those folks or approves the people that the council puts forward, the courts put forward, or their vacancies for a long time. So we think that that should be spread out to other elected officials, including the public advocate, the controller, and then on a rotating basis, the borough presidents. That would give the board more power to really look at the oversight role and not be tied to the mayor's view about what the commissioner wants to have happen within the jails. Finally, we also want the board to have the authority to enforce its standards. Right now, even when the board identifies critical problems that are happening in the jails, they really have no authority to do anything about it other than, the fact that they can provide some transparency and have some press attention from what happens at their meetings. They need to have the ability to shut down units that aren't complying with their minimum standards. Obviously, they wouldn't do that lightly, but if they have the staff there that's been working with the department, pointing out specific problems, helping them come up with ways to fix that, and they don't do it, then they need to be able to say this unit has to be closed, or this person who's been here for the last 3 years in these horrific conditions needs to be released. So we urge you to include changing the Board of Corrections authority in your changes to the standards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, peace and blessings, everyone. I'm Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips. Everyone refers to me as Dr. V. I am the CEO and founder of Visionary Ministries and also a member of the Jails Action Coalition and Hold Solitary. But today I'm speaking totally on my own. I just want to.
1 second, ma'am. If you could put the microphone a little closer to you.
A little closer to me?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's
Give me
better.
back 15 seconds. All right. Yes, I'm serious. So I just want to say, as an Army brat, I was always taught, about law and order. And for the past 20 years, I have worked or volunteered on Rikers Island and DOC facilities throughout the boroughs, and CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, nursing, monitoring those with serious mental illness, BRAD H diagnosis, and some forms of chaplaincy. So it's been different times and areas that I've had access to pretty much the entire island. And I just want to enhance what my comrades have just said, So as an Army brat, we're taught you leave no man behind. That was instilled in me and young. And working on Rikers, that's exactly what I've done by speaking on the record in person since 2012. I decided to come forward because of the barbaric conditions that I've witnessed, the violations of human rights that I've witnessed, and I am here today because it's still occurring. So everything that was mentioned as recommendations, I hope that you're taking heed to it. I just also want to say several years ago, and I'm gonna put this in context, when Councilman Keith Powers was chair of the Criminal Justice Committee. I don't know if y'all follow City Council, but that was many years ago. I testified before him with a budget asking for additional officers because at that time they were still working 2 and 3 tours almost daily. And for an increase because a lot of times people didn't have access to rec, access to court. How are we not handling due process on domestic soil? They didn't have access to medical, which is still occurring right now. Last year, 23-year-old Bronx native Charisma Jones died having lack of access to medical care on Rikers Island. And at that time, they didn't have access to programming. And what we do know is that programming actually assists in public safety behind the walls. And so when it does not occur, many other things take its place. And so that was one, access to more officers. And I also asked for an increase in budget and programming and an increase in budget for BOC, the Board of Corrections. And that's how, well, not because of just me, but that hearing is what led to them having the 30 staff that they now do have. And it's still not enough. So when we say an oversight board who lacks accountability, that does not have the power to actually enforce the Department of Corrections to make sure that they are providing minimum standards, it's almost laughable, but it's really not, because heartbeats actually stop because they do not have that power to hold the commissioner, to hold the officers accountable in real time. Nor do they have the power to remove someone like Charisma Jones, who was denied access to CHS Correctional Health Services at least 5 documented times before being moved to the hospital where she eventually died. But if the board had access to remove people that were in immediate danger like that, we could have probably saved her life. And I'll just finish by saying, you know, I don't see much variety when I look at this commission. I'm gonna be very honest. But I hope that I at least tapped into each of your moral compass. Because yes, politics is very important. And that's another reason why the mayor should not be solely responsible for making the chair. Because when the chair is appointed by someone whose politics don't align with humanity, we have a problem. And I'll talk more when I see you next time at the next meeting that I'm going to pop up at. So I won't waste my time. I know it's over. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Thank you all for your testimony. Now
Any
questions?
questions?
Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Jones.
Good evening, and thank you for your testimony. It sounds like a part, not just the Board of Corrections oversight, but it sounds like there needs to be a segregation of those who have mental health challenges versus criminals. Is there a thought around that?
Repeat that last part of your question.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of discussion, not just about oversight, but that you have people incarcerated where the root of the problem may be severe mental health issues as opposed to criminology. And so is that in fact the case? And is there something that needs to be done to parse out how we deal with people who may have severe mental health issues as opposed to people who are prone to criminality?
Well, certainly we have far too many people who are incarcerated with mental health needs, and we should be pursuing other policies for that. One of the things about closing Rikers is we're supposed to be able to have fewer people who are incarcerated, and that's a population that we should really be focused on. Unfortunately, we're not putting in the funding to have alternatives to incarceration available for people. We know that they actually work. We've seen that when you they had justice involved supportive housing where people could be directly placed in that housing, that has results, and it's very successful. And they've studied similar models and shown that people remain housed, remain out of the criminal legal system. So you're right. We completely agree with that we need to have more ways to divert people from the criminal legal system and not have them incarcerated. So thank you for that.
You know, I have a question. We've heard testimony across the city about the injustices that are happening in correction. And this, one of the solutions is this 1% of the personnel budget, which is now set at 1.2 billion. And we discussed the fact that with 12 million, is that enough, right? Well, we don't know, but the question always remains to me is, you know, when you've had minimum staffing, like you mentioned before, Dr. Phillips, it didn't lead to the solutions to the problems. It perhaps made it better. So aside from the funding issue, what are the real reforms you have to have? Because you could have a budget of 2%, and if the folks are not listening and not applying those changes, not hiring the right people, not making sure that people have the right approach and the humanity, then you just basically putting money in a budget and it not leading to change. So having had experience, the three of you, how would you see that combination of funding and policy changes, I would say?
I think that's why our third part of our recommendations is really important about giving them more power. And that's why this can only be done through a charter change. So they have already the power to set the minimum standards and giving them more staff, and they've never been fully staffed. I don't think that's what Dr. V was saying. She's saying that's what got them up to where they are now, which is not fully staffed. So we haven't seen them actually have that. But even if they have that, they need more authority to be able to enforce their rules. And so if the board could say to the department, you have to close down this housing unit, you have to close down this jail, that would give them some leverage in requiring them to follow their minimum standards. Because when the board does bring some attention to it, they can make some progress on it, but there are many different pieces of it. So I would say giving them the authority to be able to do that or to be able to release people. Obviously, they would have to make a record to have that happen, but it's something that having that authority would really make tremendous change.
I just want to add something to what JJ was saying. You know, everything she said was totally correct. And as soon as you was asking the question, I said, well, our recommendations say, you know, to make sure the chair can't just be appointed by the mayor. Make sure they have the power to do the minimum standards. But more importantly, you know, you can't parent if you can't parent, right? And when I say that, I mean, the oversight board is supposed to be mentors, it's supposed to be leaders in a sense. And if you have a commissioner, maybe not this one, but it's been, if you have a commissioner that's actually saying, well, you can't tell me that. If you have leaders in DOC that actually tell the chair, well, we didn't have to tell you we opened up this new unit. Where do you go from that? If I'm supposed to be watching your actions and hold you accountable, yet I cannot hold you accountable, it's all fluff. And that's why we're asking you to, all of y'all pretty much to step up, because we're all New Yorkers and we all are worthy of having our life, and let alone our day in court on domestic soil.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. Thank you all for your testimony. None of you talked about this, but since this is a land use hearing, I thought I would just ask and see generally if you have any views on the borough-based jails, and specifically if you, since it seems like many of you have been active in advocating for our incarcerated populations for many years, whether you were at all involved in the 2017 ULURP process, and if any lessons learned there that you would want us to know as we look at the charter and thinking about how the ULURP process worked or didn't work.
Can I say something before you answer? Oh, okay. I just want to say, I'm happy you asked that. And so, you know, when I think of land, I think of returning citizens, and returning citizens are worthy of housing as well. And when it comes to the borough-based jails, I think we should speed that process up if possible because of the lives being lost. And when I just want y'all to think about this when y'all go home, you might hear of a life being lost because they died due to, you know, Rikers Island and stuff, but you never hear about the families that I actually work with, who might have lost a limb or returned back to the community now disabled because of things that might have occurred behind the walls. And there's no workers' comp for that. You know, there's no payment coming to them. They just have to make do and survive. I'm a brain surgery survivor. And so when I tell you, I know what it's like to be disabled in this city that doesn't plan for us in any way to survive and thrive. I want y'all to think about that, because closing Rikers is a must. Implementing these recommendations is a must, because that's how we move forward as a city and save lives and start some type of redemption.
Thank you. Any other questions? I thank you all for your testimony. Let me call now the next panel. Rain Riley, Walkie Massacoy, and Abraham Morris. I'm sorry. Tell us your name, please.
Hello, Rain Riley. Am I good to go?
Yep.
Awesome. Good evening. My name is Rain Riley, and I'm one of many New Yorkers who's disabled and vulnerable to loss of autonomy. I'm here as a member of tenants and neighbors, and also as an advocate for the Jails Action Coalition that you just heard from. And most importantly, I'm here as a concerned citizen. When I hear the term land use, my first thoughts go to conservation, to education, farming, and essential human needs. Hoarding massive lots of lands while homelessness soars and illness rises wasn't in my vision of that. Hospitals are overflowing, climate change is rapidly increasing, and yet we're investing into prisons and jails. Incarceration has rapidly increased in the last century with steep inclines in the last few years. You can look at what they had just said because it's about the same that I am saying. Now keep in mind that disabled people specifically are only 15% of the general population, and almost 500,000 people like me with disabilities still end up locked up in state prisons on a given day, accounting for 40% of the state prison populations nationwide and 50% of the women's state prison populations. While some enter prison already disabled, many become disabled in prison because of torturous conditions previously, tapped in upon. And the poor conditions have only been exacerbated by prisons allowing viral infections to go unchecked in the facilities since 2020. Courts excessively refuse prison accommodations as well as sufficient medical care, and half of people in state prisons lacked health insurance even at the time of their arrest. 1 in 5 of them have gone without a single health-related visit since entering prison. And sometimes the medical providers just stand there on camera while their colleagues beat their patients that they were sworn to protect to death, like in the case of Robert Brooks, may he rest in peace. Now, Robert Brooks is also one of the Black and Latinx population, which makes up 53% of the city's population, but as I'm sure you know, 90% of jailed individuals. Let's not forget now that mental impairment is also a disability, and showing symptoms publicly has been effectively criminalized in New York City. Upon first contact with law enforcement, individuals with disabilities experience disproportionately negative outcomes because of their atypical behavior. Fun facts, Rikers that we just heard of is the city's largest mental health facility, not a hospital. 50% of those people incarcerated at Rikers have been diagnosed with a mental health condition, but have little or no access to care while they're locked up. And what's even more upsetting is the fact that 85% of people on Rikers Island haven't even been convicted. They're just being held there in pretrial because they don't have the money to afford bail. And then once they get released from prison, the worst fact, in my opinion, is that all individuals face a risk of death that is more than 12 times higher than from when they entered or from non-incarcerated individuals. Now, all this to say is that being incarcerated has become unconstitutional and unsafe. Almost at least 33 people have died in the New York City jail system since Adams became mayor in 2022, but the actual number of deaths is unknown because under Mayor Adams, the Department of Corrections has stopped reporting deaths to the public, which makes no sense. To me, at least. I personally could have easily been institutionalized in Rikers many times just for showing symptoms of distress and illness. And honestly, I think I was spared this horror due to the color of my skin. I have been sent to psych many times for actual medical crises. I've been forcibly institutionalized. I've been tranquilized. I've been bruised. I've been locked down and left to deal with deadly allergic reactions from irresponsibly prescribed medications. And it's clear from all of this that we can't trust individuals, even those that are indirectly like in the healthcare system, to be ethical. We need to write the ethicality into our charter itself. We get to define it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello. My name is Woki Massaquoi, and I am from Mott Haven, and currently live, on East Tremont. So I don't know what, board, like, I believe it's like 6 or something like that. But, so, thank you. So I'm here today because number one, I'm an artist. I'm also a citizen of the Bronx, like a lifelong citizen. I tried moving once, but that didn't work out. 10 days and I'm back. But I came back and unfortunately, fortunately, but not fortunately, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But I'm being treated like a criminal, and I'm not a criminal. And when you ask the question of how do, does is what you're asking going to separate, criminals from mental health patients? That is my question, because how can you punish me for both? How can you reprimand me for one in the same breath that you're telling me it's gonna be okay when it's not? When it's 8 o'clock, when it's 9 o'clock in the morning and I get a wellness call from some stranger in the community who's not gonna call me and tell me that I did a wellness check call for you because I didn't hear from you for 3 days, and the cops show up two times in one day. And then the third time they show up, your lights are out, you have a dog, and you're in your shower, and the SWAT team swats through your home and picks you out of your bathtub and puts you in a psych ward, okay? And then also sends you to central booking when you're done. What is that? How is that fair? On any level, humanely? I'm a woman. Maybe if I saw 5 women cops come in, I'd be like, all right, ladies, let's go. But it was 5 men. What are you doing in my bathroom? Why are you touching me while I'm naked? As a Black woman, as an African immigrant child, why? My body, my home is sacred. I told you, I'm fine. If you could only be as transparent, these officers. Okay, well, if you let us in and just let us see what's going on in your home, we will leave. But that's not being done, and it's really unfair. So we do need that separation, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you both for what you just shared. Feeling now that what I have to share is completely unrelated to what was previously just spoken about, but I really, I hope it is not an effort to lessen what was just said. My name is Abram Morris. I'm a born and raised New Yorker, and I'm an urban planning student at the City College of New York, which is New York City's oldest public college. And I believe that New York is becoming increasingly unaffordable and out of reach for the everyday New Yorker. And I believe that that is in part because the organizations that control our land use and operate on our land are actually not representative of the everyday New Yorker. So I have a recommendation for changing the governance models of 3 of these institutions, specifically the New York City Economic Development Corporation, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and the Department of City Planning. They're all very similar in approach, but slightly different. And they all have to do with fundamentally changing the public's relationship with the boards of these organizations. The New York City Economic Development Corporation has 27 members on its board, and they're all chosen by the governor. And I would like to propose that half of those are instead chosen by the City Council of New York. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority has a 23-member board, and 4 of those members are recommended by the mayor of New York. And I'm suggesting that 2 of them should instead be recommended by the means of a vote by the New York City population. There's also 6 members on that board, the MTA board, that are representative of organized labor and people who use the subway system, and they do not vote on the board. They're token members. So I believe that's not under this under the city's power, but they should also be granted voting control because they should have some sort of say in that institution. Finally, the Department of City Planning has 13 members on its commission, and the mayor appoints the chair and 6 of its members. And I'm suggesting that 3 of those 6 should instead be appointed by the New York City Council. On a completely unrelated note, what was just said before is extremely important, and I'm not sure if the borough-based jails are going to solve the problem, but the police destroy communities by preventing people from speaking their voice. They prevent us from being safe by imposing their own version of safety on us. And the system of incarceration that we have does not work. It destroys our communities.
Thank you all three for your testimony. Are there any questions?
And I'd also like to add, besides there being a separation, how would you all ensure that there's protection for those that will listen? Because you did make a poignant point. There are some people that don't listen. I have been in environments where it's a mix, it's a mixed beings. And some people are far gone, but there are others that aren't. There are others that want the help. There are others that are seeking the help. There are others that are, being a help to others while they're seeking the help. So how are you all going to ensure protection for those people? There are criminals, but there are people that aren't, and I just want to know how you all will ensure that.
So this commission has been charter not pounded upon, has put together to try to recommend changes into the charter. And even if they're really legitimate issues, we have to remain within that document, right? So the point earlier made about the MTA, for instance, the MTA is a state entity, not under the city's charter jurisdiction. And so this happens with boards and authorities too. I think the Board of Corrections is something that has been talked about. We heard testimony about it, establishing a budget, changing the rules, changing the composition, appointing the people who are going to make decisions rather than the departmental folks doing that. So that's sort of different, right? Because that is would be under the jurisdiction of the charter. Okay, are there any questions? Anyone? All right, thank you.
Are you saying that the question that I posed cannot be answered? Yeah? Okay, so is there a better way for me to pose it? Is there, yeah.
When,
because I'm
when,
sure that-
I hear you. I think when we started this hearing, we said that we're looking for things. Okay. So part of our mandate is to try to propose changes that are going to go to the voters. I think that was one of your recommendations, right? That people voted for the voter via, and so, but we cannot make recommendations of things that could be changed by local law. So if there's something that could be changed by local law, like what you're suggesting, it's not something that this charter would be able to take on. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, so I thank you all for your testimony. Unless there are any questions, we're going to move because we have to close this hearing. And in the interest of time, certainly last but not least, we have two more, thank you, people on Zoom to testify. Christopher Leon Johnson and Maki Tian, Mbaki Tian.
Yes. Hello?
Mbaki, we're gonna, Ms. Tian.
Yes,
Sorry
I'm
if I
here.
didn't pronounce your name, but can you
My
start?
name is Mbake Cham. Can
Go
you hear
ahead.
me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. My name is Mbake Cham. I'm the Housing and Health Community Organizer at Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York, mostly known as Sydney. We advocate for people with disabilities in the five boroughs of New York City. And today, we are happy to join and testify regarding housing and land use in the Bronx. The fundamental part of land use is housing. We cannot talk about affordable housing without talking about accessible housing. People with disabilities need reasonable accommodation in public housing developments that receive government funding. Also, we advocate for a fair and just proceeding of housing application to combat the discrimination that people with disabilities may encounter when their disabilities are disclosed. We strongly advocate for fairness in selecting applicants for apartments and homes without disqualifying people with disabilities because they live with it. As developments continue in the Bronx, we need to preserve historic buildings as landmarks for the culture and the spiritual belief of long-term Bronx site. The Bronx is home to significant historic buildings, cultural sites, parks, and zoo. These landmarks reflect point of attraction for tourists coming from different parts of the world. Bronx Zoo, Van Cortlandt Park, Pelham Parkway, Oak Beach, historic churches, etc. These places of attraction need to be accessible for people with disabilities or mobility impairment. The promotion of environmental health protects individuals with disabilities or chronic disease to stay healthy and maintain long-term residency in the environment. Reducing air pollution and expanding green structure will help develop a healthy environment for individuals with asthma, allergies, and respiratory disease. We can do this by including the community in remediating toxic sites and reducing pollution in neighborhoods near industrial zones. We thank the New York City Commission to strengthen local democracy for providing Sydney with the opportunity to testify. And thanks again, and we really look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Leon Johnson?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes. go
Yeah,
ahead.
hello. My name is Christopher Leon Johnson. Thanks for having me on. I'm on the bus right now at Greenpoint at his home. So I wanna call for the commission to preserve NYCHA, to try to advocate these $4 billion to save NYCHA. I saw this information from Layla Law Glisco from the City Club of New York, and who's a district leader of the 75th Assembly District. I live in Brooklyn. I live near Kingsborough houses. I live in a private apartment building, but I care about the people that live in NYCHA. I'm calling on the charter to help allocate $4 billion into saving NYCHA. $4 billion to save NYCHA. NYCHA need to be saved by the city for this budget and the next budget, while at the same time that we need to call for the eradication of CCOP. CCOP are full of people that are bent on getting rid of the people that they don't want on the behalf of developers. I'm calling on the eradication of the CCOP. I'm calling on the preservation of NYCHA. I'm calling on the saving of the Elliott, Chelsea, Fulton houses in Manhattan, in Manhattan, which is everybody's district. These people are good people that deserve a place to live. If they're paying their rent they deserve to stay. If they're not paying their rent, that's a different story. Yeah, they gotta go, right? I believe in that, like I said. But just because there's developers that believe that these people they make less than the market rate, they deserve to be displaced. I'm calling on no displacement of NYCHA developments in this situation. I'm calling on I understand that the unions are behind this stuff because there's a lot of jobs in place, but it doesn't matter how many jobs you have. What's the point of having the jobs where you can't live in the same place that you are building? That goes for the casino biz too in that same area, Community Board 4 in Manhattan. So at the same time, like I said, we need to preserve NYCHA, $4 billion into NYCHA, save these people from being displaced on behalf of developers. And at the same time, I know I have 1 minute left. I'm calling on the city the city to this city charter to advocate to the city council to open up that the Barista Hub up in outside City Hall Park. That's been approved by the Planning Commission. It's been approved. I know it's land use. It's been approved by the City Council Land Use Commission and City Planning. So I'm calling on this charter to really advocate. I know you guys are union bosses and people that have a lot of power in this political game with the City Council and the Speaker office. So I'm calling on this panel to really advocate for that the Barista Hub be built on behalf of the Worker Justice Project of 32nd New England. So like I said, please do that. I hope you make that happen. I already told Justice Byrne this afternoon inside the city council hearing, but at the same time, like I said, we need to save NYCHA. Save NYCHA. This is land use. Save NYCHA. And I know you guys got to go. So thank you so much and enjoy your day. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? All right, thank you both. With that, we concludes the testimony part of this hearing today. I want to make some announcements. I want to remind everybody that the next two hearings will be held on Wednesday, May the 14th at the Staten Island Museum at Snug Harbor, and it will be focusing on budget transparency. And the following Monday, May 19th at John Jay College in Manhattan, and it will be focusing on government accountability. All hearings are from 5 to 7 p.m. and folks are invited to testify either in person or via Zoom. Registration and further details on all hearings are on our website at www.thecommission.nyc. I want to thank everyone who testified today and watch online or in person, and the commission staff who do a tremendous work. Thank you all. Sometimes we don't recognize you, but great work. Thank you. Continue to do that. Just to note, if you were unable to testify today due to time constraints, you can submit your testimony at any time within 72 hours after this hearing concludes. Please send your testimony to info@thecommission.nyc, info@thecommission.nyc. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners or any other business that we have to conduct? If none, can we entertain a motion to adjourn? So moved. Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The ayes have it and so ordered. We are therefore adjourned. Thank you, everyone.